Chelsea have drawn up a three-man shortlist to replace the potentially outgoing Marco Correa with a potential reunion for one of Xabi Alonso's greatest providers in the Bundesliga. LaCroix of Crystal Palace is also being considered as Xabi rebuilds our centre-back situation, but supposedly that is only one of a list of numerous options being considered. Despite all of the proposed changes to the model, Bluco be Blucoing with signing an 18-year-old winger from AIK. Xabi Alonso is in the house, sort of. He hasn't officially started work yet. Obviously, transfer stuff is ongoing, but he has visited Cobham to familiarise himself with the surroundings and what he's got available to him. Chelsea are currently in a legal battle with Man City, claiming that them tapping up Enzo Maresca is what made our season implode. And some interesting developments on Liam Delap, with the player himself stating that although he'd like to stay at Chelsea, there are some changes in Premier League management which might just change his mind. Welcome, Blue Believers, to another episode of the Stamford Sync, where we are syncing up with everything Chelsea FC. And it's starting to hot up. We're starting to see names. We've been seeing names about people going out for a little while, but we're starting to see names of people that we're being linked with, and let's not waste any time and get into it. Transfer News Live posted this via Team Talk. Chelsea have drawn up a three-man shortlist to replace Marco Correa this summer if he leaves. Alejandro Grimaldo is one of the leading names under consideration, with Xabi Alonso eager to reunite with the Bayer Leverkusen fullback after their successful spell together in Germany. Nathaniel Brown and Juventus defender Andrea Cambiasso are also being closely monitored. So, I don't really know much about Nathaniel Brown, so I need you guys to get in the comments and tell me whether he's one worth considering. I'm hearing stuff about Cambiasso recently, and he does sound like a good player, although initially after those rumours came out, they were quite quickly squashed, so I do find this to be an interesting one. But the really interesting one on this list is Grimaldo, right? Grimaldo, what a player he was under Xabi Alonso. Now, if we do go in for Grimaldo, there's a couple of interesting implications about what it means for the squad. It would likely mean that we are in fact going to go for that three at the back kind of system. Grimaldo was unbelievable in Bayer Leverkusen's invincible season, getting 12 goals and 14 assists from a left wing back position, from a player who went from being a Barcelona reject to finding himself being one of the top GA in the entire Bundesliga that season. That's the kind of guy you want on your books. It's interesting because obviously he would know the system really well, and like I say, for me, that would be some sort of indication that Xabi Alonso would be, not completely, but be trying to recreate the same base formation and system that he used at Bayer Leverkusen, and the wing-backs were so important to that. Grimaldo, like I said, 12 goals, 14 assists. Jeremy Frimpong on the right side playing right wing-back with 14 goals and 10 assists too. So Grimaldo looks like an awesome player. He's obviously experienced. He's got the same winning credentials that Xabi Alonso does. I don't even know how expensive he'd be, because I don't think he's got a huge amount of time left on his deal. He's obviously not quite as young as some of the other players we've got in the squad at the moment. I really like the look of him, and I would be super happy if we went for him. At the end of the day, I'd rather not lose Marco Correa, but it just is starting to feel like that's what's going to happen. So guys, get in the comments, tell me what you think. I need to know about Nathaniel Brown. Tell me what you know about him. Cambiasso looks interesting. We've all read a little bit about him recently, but for me, out of those three, Grimaldo really interesting. And guys, if you've made it this far into today's episode of the Stamford Sync, please do me the distinct honour of liking and sharing the video, subscribe to the channel, or just roast me in the comments, whatever gets you through your day. Right, so on with the transfer talk, and it's time to talk about LaCroix. So Pice posted this via Bobby Vincent. Sources say Chelsea have discussed LaCroix internally, though he is one of the numerous options being considered. So not a massive link. I mean, Bobby Vincent's pretty good. I can imagine LaCroix is one of the types of players that we'd be looking at. I recently did a one-in, one-out podcast with my friend Jay from Talking Chelsea. Go and check that video out if you haven't already. He said LaCroix was one of the players that he would like to see in as well. I would really like, personally, to see Jan-Paul van Heck off Brighton, but if the rumours are to be believed, Tottenham have just had a £70 million bid turned down for that centre-back, so maybe that's a little bit of a bridge too far. I'm not sure if we're going to go out and spend that kind of money. LaCroix is going to be a little bit cheaper, doesn't have quite as long left on his deal, and also has won 3 trophies in the last 2 seasons, with the FA Cup, the Community Shield, and now the Conference League. So he's 26, so he's not old, but he's getting into his prime, still definitely got a good 5 years in front of him. A very astute defender, very different kind of profile to Levi Colwill as well. If this is the kind of experienced centre-back that we're going to go in for, it's the kind of guy I think we need to get. I don't think we're going to see us going in for £100 million players or anything like that. And to be honest, I absolutely don't think we need to. One of Xabi Alonso's best assets as a manager is developing players. He did it at Bayer Leverkusen. Grimaldo, who I talked about earlier, was not exactly setting the world alight. And he got 12 goals and 14 assists in that season. You look at the likes of Granit Xhaka as well, who was a reject from Arsenal, essentially a disgraced reject from Arsenal, although he did kind of come a little bit good towards the end, turned him into an absolute world beater. Then you look at Real Madrid as well, the likes of Arda Güler, for instance, experiments who weren't getting any game time, but Xabi Alonso brought them in, took him under his wing and turned them into really good-looking players. LaCroix is a really nice mix of there's still potential there to become a world beater, but also he's already winning trophies at a club that is ostensibly finishing lower than us in the table. So guys, let me know A, what you think about LaCroix, and B, if not LaCroix, who would you like to see come into Chelsea to play that centre-back position that doesn't cost £80 million. Right, next up, Bluco be Bluco in. Pice posted this. Chelsea have discussed an offer worth 21.6 million, including bonuses, for 18-year-old winger Zadok Johanna from AIK. So, the thing I wanted to talk about this isn't necessarily the player himself, because I would be lying if I said I knew anything about him. Now, 20 mil seems like quite a lot. We've done things like this before with David Washington and Omari Kellerman, right? We spent a lot of money on these young players. The thing I want to talk about with this is to any of the Chelsea fans that are seeing this and be like, Bluco aren't changing. It's like, mate, they were never going to stop doing this. The thing is, it's all about adjusting the model, not ripping up the playbook, right? They are still, and they were honest about it as well. They said they're still going to look for young talents in the market. Financially, they seem that they deem that is the best way to go forward. And I even mentioned this a little while ago. I was like, I do think that Xabi Alonso is going to be given license to affect the first team. This guy isn't coming into the first team. It's absolutely not going to happen. He will be bought and loaned back to his parent club, or go to Strasbourg, or go to another club somewhere else to get game time. Also, Todd Bowley's been talking again recently about the multi-club model, so I wouldn't be surprised to see us go in for another club, or I say us, but to see Bluco go in for another club at some point as well. Santos has been talked about. There's some talks about Portuguese clubs and stuff. Ultimately, what this is, it's not proof that things aren't changing. It's proof that things are changing a little bit, which is kind of what they said that they were going to do. You know, we're looking at LaCroix, who's an experienced centre-back. We're potentially interested in Grimaldo, who is an experienced left-winger with lots of good winning credentials. And yeah, every now and again, we're going to go out and we're going to buy a completely unknown 18-year-old for 20 mil, and they are going to hope that he develops into a world beater, because they will always be looking for the next Esteval Willian. Giovanni Quenda was very much the same, although we spent quite a lot of money on him. I don't expect to see Bluco stop looking for young talent, but the change that I am expecting to see is Xabi Alonso being given more power and control over who comes into and who can affect the first team. So guys, like I say, if you know anything about this lad, Zadok Johanna from AIK, then let me know what you think about him in the comments, but genuinely, I don't expect to see him in the first team, and I don't even think this is the only very young player we will buy this summer, but I do not expect them to come into the first team. Right, next up, Xabi Alonso is in the house, kind of. Nizar Quintela posted this. Xabi Alonso visited Cobham earlier this week with his coaching staff in a trip to familiarise himself with the setup, to get to know key figures and to hit the ground running. It was not related to transfers, which can be done remotely on an ongoing basis. So look, it's just one of those. It's good to know that he's kind of got his foot in the door, literally as well as figuratively. Do you know what I mean? He's been announced as the manager. That's all official. And there was a little worry, wasn't there, when Arne Slot got sacked at Liverpool, and it was like, oh, can you imagine if they, you know, I had some guys saying in my comment sections in and around that time, oh, I bet he's got a clause in his contract that would let him go to Liverpool. I was like, nah, man, absolutely not. As much as Xabi Alonso will want to protect himself and get the power to run the squad, like, Bluco would never let themselves be sold down the river like that, especially after what's just happened with Maresca. But Xabi Alonso is in the house and getting used to the setup and what he's going to be working with. This is only a good thing. Transfer work is ongoing, and I imagine it's probably been ongoing the second that he signed the paper to become our new manager. And I imagine he, even just while he was negotiating with them, he probably already had ideas with his team about the kind of players they'd like to bring in and the ones they want to develop. So like I've said before, man, one of the really interesting things for me about Xabi Alonso isn't just who he wants to bring in, it's what can he do with the players that are already there. Like, I, for one, I'm totally ready to write off the likes of Wesley Fofana and Alejandro Garnacho, and personally, if it was down to me, I'd be like, yeah, get rid of them and bring some new guys in. But you really don't know. Like, Xabi Alonso seems to back himself to change players' fortunes, right? And we've seen him do it a couple of times. So as much as it is going to be interesting seeing who we bring in and seeing how the system and the formation starts to shape up, I'm literally just as excited to see who he might be able to turn into the mentality monster that he's been talking about. Next up, Chelsea and Man City, a legal battle pertaining to Enzo Maresca. This has been going on for a little while now. Kieran Gill posted this. Chelsea and Man City in talks over compensation for Maresca, had 3.5 years remaining on his contract, 4.5 years with the club's extra year option. Sources believe sudden exit contributed to campaign imploding. Now, tinfoil hat time. I believe that Maresca down tools in order to get out of the club. Now, what I'm not saying is that he was lying about not liking the way that the club works. Like, I genuinely believe that. I think that he wanted more control. He wanted more power. And this isn't about taking anything away from Blueco, because he should have been given, ultimately, it's easy to say that in retrospect, hindsight's 2020, but he definitely should have been given more power and control to affect the first team how he wanted to. But the timeline about how all of this happened, we were doing really well. We were doing really well. We were second in the Premier League, and then bam, 1 win in 8 games, which literally, that was the beginning of our season completely being curtailed. And it was really, really unusual, right? And Enzo Maresca was doing weird things, like constantly playing Enzo Fernandez and Marco Correa and Moises Caicedo, despite the fact they had injury issues and worries and stuff. He was doing weird things, like in the Man United game, like leaving an injured Cole Palmer on. Like, he made so many weird decisions. And we only won that 1 game against Everton in that 8-game stretch before he left. And this is the other thing as well. If he didn't have a guaranteed job at the end of that, he'd have stuck it out until he got paid, or like, do you know what I mean? Until we got sacked, so he'd get paid. But he literally chose to walk away. The other interesting thing was not like literally like the day after Enzo Maresca came out after that Everton game and said, "This has been the worst 48 hours of my career." That is when David Ornstein chose to drop the bomb that Enzo Maresca has long been on a list of successors for Pep Guardiola should he leave Manchester City at the end of the season. And also, in that piece of news, David Ornstein said he'd been sat on this for a while. And interestingly, he obviously had access to the list, but only dropped Enzo Maresca because he's a reporter and it was sensationalist. And obviously, there was all this going on at the time. So the other interesting thing about this, City, now it's not on this one, but I have seen it on other reports. City are not fighting this either. They're looking to get it dealt with quickly, which essentially is an admission of guilt. So look, for me, it's actually less about City and it's more about Maresca being a bit of a snake when it comes down to it. But it really does look like this is kind of what happened. And we should feel right to be bereaved. Look, we were second in the Premier League. We just won 2 trophies. Like, not getting 1 centre-back, which is the main thing that, Maresca obviously kind of went on, is like, I needed a centre-back after we lost Levi Colwill. Without Levi Colwill, we got to second in the Premier League, and then all of a sudden, bam, things just go down the pan. He comes out and absolutely roasts the ownership. And this isn't me defending the ownership, because we've seen outside of Enzo Maresca, like, it's not just Maresca related. The Potter thing was a disaster. Even bringing Frank Lampard back wasn't necessarily a good idea, apart from placating the fans a little bit. Liam Rosenior was a bad idea. The players that we've brought in aren't good enough to challenge. Like, all of this is true. And it's not about deflecting blame from the ownership, but it is just about highlighting the fact that I think Enzo Maresca is a bit of a snake. So guys, let me know what you think about it in the comments. That's tinfoil hat theory over for the day, but I genuinely believe that Man City essentially tapped him up and he made the decision. And this is, for me, is backed up by the things that happened as well. We do really well, 8-game losing run. He comes out, talks about how he doesn't like the owners. The day after that, David Ornstein drops the bomb that he's been on Man City's shortlist for a long time. Lo and behold, Pep Guardiola leaves at the end of the season. Maresca's the new manager. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's not, there's just too much for it to be coincidence. I'm not really a tinfoil hat guy, but this one just strikes me as a little bit too convenient. Let me know what you think in the comments. Okay, up next, Chelsea Transfer posted this via Football London about Xabi Alonso. Sources insist there is a constant dialogue between Xabi Alonso and the sporting leadership team on the club's plans in this summer's transfer window. Chelsea are looking to sign a player in 3 key areas in the coming months, including centre-back, central midfield and left wing. On top of this, there are also set to be a number of departures from Stamford Bridge when the summer transfer window officially opens in less than 2 weeks' time. There's a couple of interesting things in here. So obviously we already know that Xabi Alonso is involved in the transfer stuff that's going on right now. Like, that's just a given. We've been hearing that for a while. The next interesting thing is the update, right? Because what came out last week is that Chelsea are looking to sign 2 first-teamers, and now we're looking at 3 with a central midfielder being added into that mix. So, is that some sort of indication that they expect Enzo Fernandez to be leaving? Now, why this is really interesting, it seems like this is going to heat up after tomorrow, right? Because the Real Madrid presidential elections are tomorrow, and they are all coming out being like, I'm going to sign Haaland, and it's like, I brought you Mbappe, and it's like, I'm bringing you all these people, and I'm bringing Jose Mourinho. One guy is like, Jurgen Klopp's going to be our manager, even though we've had the here we go from Jose Mourinho. It's a circus at Real Madrid at the moment. But potentially, depending on who gets announced, could be the difference between Real Madrid looking to sign Enzo Fernandez or not. The other thing that's interesting about this is there is some rumours that Real Madrid are interested in one or two of PSG's midfielders. So if PSG lose a Vitinha or a Fabian Ruiz, it's like potentially Enzo Fernandez might become a target for PSG as well. So that seems to be the thing to me, right? Is like, we know Reece James can play in that midfield role really, really well. Obviously, we've already got Moises Caicedo. We've got backups in Lavia, Esugo and Andre Santos. So if we're looking at signing a central midfielder, maybe you would have to think that is because we are expecting one to leave. And, you know, it's weird, isn't it? Because the conversation about Enzo Fernandez and where he plays is still kind of like, I don't actually know where he plays. But that to me seems to make the most sense. So I'd like to know what you think about that. The other thing is the fact that we are not really making any signings yet. We are seeing Tottenham sign Senesi and Andy Robertson. We're seeing Anthony Gordon go to Barcelona for 70 mil. Do you know what I mean? We are seeing a lot of these moves already start to happen, but Chelsea seem to be a little bit behind the curve. Why I'm not sure I don't really know what's going on. Do you know what I mean? It's like, do we have the opportunity and we're not? Because the post here is right, like the window doesn't officially open until the 15th of June or something. So it is absolutely wild that all of these big deals are happening at the moment, and it is starting to feel like we're being a little bit left behind. But I would imagine if they were concerned about us losing top prime targets, then maybe we'd be moving a little bit quicker. For instance, the one I'm a little bit nervous about is, as I mentioned before, Jan-Paul van Hecke being targeted by Tottenham and having a 70 mid bill turned down. Now, is that because he doesn't want to go to Tottenham? Is it because Brighton don't think that's enough money? Like, I'm not really sure. And obviously, Van Hecke isn't currently one of the names that's being mentioned with Chelsea, as we've just seen as LaCroix, but it does say there's a list of numerous centre-backs. I would expect Van Hecke to be on that list. So I'm starting to get a little bit itchy because I'm like, okay, all of these things are happening and none of them are happening to us yet. So, you know, I'd like to know what you guys think about that in the comments. Do you think we're being left behind already by our rivals that are signing players? And to finish up, we're going to talk a little bit about Liam Delap, and there's two quite contrasting pieces of news that I want to go to. The first is this post from Nizar Kinsella. Liam Delap remains keen to prove a point and make it at Chelsea. It remains to be seen whether he will get that chance, with Nicholas Jackson in with a shot of making Xabi Alonso's squad after his Bayern Munich loan ends. So first things first, like, respect to Liam Delap, horrible season, might genuinely be the worst season a striker at Chelsea has had in recent memory, definitely, maybe in the Premier League, I'm not sure. 41 appearances and 2 goals, and only one of those was in the Premier League. Like, that's horrendous, man. That's horrendous. There's a lot of Liam Delap backers, and I do get it. I don't think he's a bad striker. I just think he's absolutely not the right striker for us at all. Like, if he'd have got 6 goals, we'd still have been a bit underwhelmed, wouldn't we? But it'd have been like, okay, well, maybe he can build on that. I mean, surely it can't be difficult to build on 2 goals, but at the same time, like, 2 goals, whoa, that's really, really, really bad. So respect to the lad for saying that he wants to stay and fight for his spot. Ultimately, it's going to come down to whether Xabi Alonso likes his profile or not. I've got a feeling that with Omega coming back and Jackson being available, I don't know, Jackson's got, 30-odd goal involvements, 35, I think it is, in 64 appearances as far as goal involvements go in the Premier League in his time with Chelsea, and can also play left wing. We've got a fresh Emmanuel Omega coming into the squad as well. There have been some very light, terse links to be loaning him to Crystal Palace, and I guess this is the kind of stuff we're going to see in pre-season, right? Then I'd be surprised if the Liam Delap stuff happens quickly, but, there are other things in the mix right now that could speed it up. And that brings us to the latest piece of news I've seen pertaining to Liam Delap's future. Transfer News Live reposted this via Talk Sport. Liam Delap could be tempted to join Fulham if his former Ipswich manager Kieran McKenna is appointed as Marco Silva's successor at Craven Cottage. Obviously, there's been a bit of a transfer roundabout there with managers. Jose Mourinho went from Benfica to Real Madrid, and Marco Silva has taken over at Benfica, so as of right now, the Fulham post is vacant, and apparently they're looking at Kieran McKenna. McKenna has emerged as Fulham's leading candidate for the role, although activating his departure from Ipswich would require meeting the £8 million release clause in his contract. So, really interesting. The other interesting thing there is just the Ipswich angle, isn't it? Because if Kieran McKenna doesn't get the Fulham job, he'll still be at Ipswich, and Ipswich have been promoted back to the Premier League. Thus far, that is where he's played his best football. There are Everton are potentially interested in him. Newcastle have been touted with interest in him. Newcastle wanted him when we got him at the end of the day. And this is the thing with Liam Delap, like, it's not just about him being a bad striker, it's just about him not fitting into the squad that we've got, like, at all, as far as I'm concerned. And it's absolutely not for lack of minutes. Do you know what I mean? Absolutely not for lack of minutes. Liam Rosenior, to his respect as well, like Liam Rosenior did a lot of things wrong, but in his career, Liam Rosenior has got good tune out of strikers, right? You've only got, at his time at Strasbourg, Emmanuel Omega, absolutely phenomenal on his best day under Liam Rosenior. Joaquin Panicelli, also another fantastic striker who was cultivated by Liam Rosenior, and if you look at his time at Chelsea, João Pedro had been off the boil for the entire season, apart from the beginning when we first got him. Literally didn't score in like 8-9 games in a row, was getting involved very sporadically. When Liam Rosenior comes in, all of a sudden, he is up there with GA for the leagues and as one of the league's best strikers and scoring overhead kicks and, do you know what I mean, like all sorts of crazy stuff. So, like I say, Liam Rosenior is credited, to give him any credit at all, despite him not obviously being good enough to manage Chelsea. He knows how to get a tune out of strikers, and even he couldn't get more than a goal and a couple of assists out of Liam Delap. So I just think it's we've got so many attacking players that want to score goals. All of our other strikers, if you think about Nicholas Jackson, Emmanuel Omega and João Pedro, they all offer something else apart from just being a number 9. João Pedro likes to drop deep into central areas. Omega and Nicholas Jackson respectively like to drift wide, and they can both get assists and facilitate as well. Liam Delap, we saw a couple of times floating out on the right and stuff, but it's just not really his kind of thing, is it? You look at his time at Ipswich, that's the kind of striker that I think he is. So it'd be really interesting to see one way or the other. If Kieran McKenna gets the Fulham job, that, you know, Fulham's definitely a better proposition than going back to Ipswich is, and Kieran McKenna clearly knows how to get the best out of Liam Delap. So that's a really, really interesting one. Like I say, so Liam Delap says he wants to stay and fight for his place, but if Kieran McKenna gets the Fulham job, can they spend 30 to 40 mil on Liam Delap and get him over to kind of bring back and potentially improve on that Ipswich potential, bearing in mind Kieran McKenna evidently knows how to get the best out of him. So guys, that's it for today, but I'm going to wrap the video up there. I want to know about everything that we've talked about. I want to know your opinions about everything that we've talked about today. The left-back situation, Brown, Grimaldo and Cambiasso. Out of those three, who would you like to see in to replace Marc Cucurella? LaCroix of Crystal Palace is being touted with a move to Chelsea, and I do like the look of him, but what other centre-backs are available in the Premier League for that kind of age and experience profile that we could get in? Another 18-year-old's being signed, but personally I don't expect him to get close to the first team, and I don't think it's an indicator that Bluecoat aren't changing at all. Xabi Alonso is in the house and supposedly already getting involved in transfer stuff behind closed doors. You think Chelsea will win the legal battle against Man City for potentially tapping up Enzo Maresca? And the Liam Delap saga rolls on. Do you think he should be given another chance at the club, bearing in mind we've got technically 4 strikers if you include Mark Guew also in, well, 5 strikers altogether with Liam Delap and Mark Guew. We're going to have to shift some of them. And do you think going to Fulham under Kieran McKenna would be the right move for him, or should he go back to Ipswich or hold out for a Newcastle or an Everton? Nice one, guys. I'm going to wrap the video up there. Thank you very much for sticking around until the end if you did. I will catch up with you all very, very soon. Take it easy. Peace.